An interview for superheroes is being carried out by a TV station, and star superheroes like Mr. Incredible, Elastic Girl, and Frozone are the guests. They speak about their lives and how hard it is to save the world. Mr. Incredible is all dressed up in a tux and driving to his wedding. He listens to police scanners on the way and happens to catch the police chasing a criminal. He decides to help, since it will only take a moment for him. As he accelerates, he is stopped by an elderly woman who needs assistance rescuing her pet cat from atop a tree. The cat is quite stubborn and holds onto the tree despite Mr. Incredible shaking the whole tree vigorously. It finally falls off and lands in the old lady's hands. The police chase makes its way to them, and he stops the criminal by putting the tree in front of him. He rams into the tree and stops. The police thank him for saving the day. He overhears another robbery on the tour bus. He decides to take it on too, since he still has time. He gets into his car, but beside him is Incredible Boy, a kid who has been following him around and wants to be his sidekick. He throws him out of the car and warns him to stop following him. He goes to the tour bus and apprehends the criminal, but not before being helped by an Elastigirl, who is also after the same criminal. They make a lot of banter, and it appears they are scheduled to be married that evening. She leaves, reminding him not to be late. Before he leaves, he is interrupted by a suicide attempt from the topmost floor of a building. He jumps in to save the man, breaking a few of his bones in the process. However, in the same building is Bon Voyage, a wanted criminal he has been after for a while. Before he apprehends him, the Incredible Boy appears, declaring he will help Mr. Incredible. He has to save the errant boy from being killed by one of Bon Voyage's bombs, and the criminal gets away. The police are not happy with the fact, and Incredible Boy is taken away. Mr. Incredible, Bob, is on his way to his wedding. He arrives late, which annoys Helen, Elastigirl. But the ceremony continues. In later news, Mr. Sansweet sues Mr. Incredible for foiling his suicide attempt since he didn't want to be saved. This riles up a lot of anti-superhero sentiment, and the government bans superheroes. Robert is now working in a small, dingy cubicle in an insurance company filing insurance claims. He helps people file complaints against the company on the side, but his boss is not happy about it. At home, Helen is called to her son's school to apologize for Dash's pranking the teacher. Dash, however, manages to get away with it. Helen talks to her son as they drive home, wanting him not to use his powers. The young man is not pleased. Bob arrives home from work stressed out and almost throws the car away before seeing the neighbor's kid on the sidewalk. At dinner, Helen informs Bob of his son's misappropriations at school, but her husband is not even listening. While trying to help Dash with his food, he accidentally breaks the plate. He leaves the dinner table and Helen has trouble holding down the two elder kids who start fighting. Frozone, now known as Lucius, visits them. He is here to pick up Bob for a bowling night, and Helen lets him go without thinking too much about it. They leave, but it turns out they have been moonlighting as superheroes. They go save a house from fire, and Mirage, a mystery woman, sees them do it. Bob gets home late that night and gets into an argument with his wife. But when the children listen in, they stop, and everyone goes back to bed. The next day, Bob manhandles his boss, and the government has to step in and compensate the company to protect his identity. Bob returns home that day, exhausted and disheartened. In his home office, he finds a message slipped into his things from Mirage. She offers him a job as a superhero with triple the pay of his current job. He is very excited, but fails to tell Helen he has been fired from the job. He decides to take the job later that evening. He is flown in a private jet to a private island and meets Mirage, who puts him to work recovering a rogue machine that went haywire in the southern part of the island. He finds the robot and defeats it, despite being out of shape. The mysterious boss looks on happy. He is paid handsomely and begins working for the unknown tech billionaire. He gets back into shape, buys his wife a new car, and happily spends time with his family. In one of his jobs, his suit gets torn and he goes to Ellen, a retired superhero designer, for repair. She agrees to mend his ridiculous suit and create a new one for him without even asking. He returns to work, but this time he is up against a revamped robot designed to defeat him. He finds it a very tough opponent. The boss shows himself and reveals himself to be Incredible Boy, all grown up and now a supervillain. He manages to incapacitate Mr. Incredible with his zero-energy gloves. However, he mistakenly lets the hero escape and tracks him down to finish him. Bob manages to survive by hiding behind the skeleton of one of his former superhero friends that he finds in one of the caves. At home, while cleaning Bob's office, Helen sees repair work done on Bob's old suit. She immediately calls Ellen and invites her to her place. She informs her that she has made new suits for all of them, and Helen is surprised and doesn't believe it. E has her find Bob, and when she calls his workplace, she finds he had already resigned 2 months ago. Far away, Bob sneaks back to the island's mansion and manages to get into the secure room with information about what the island is all about. It appears the island is about training a robot to combat superheroes, and he finds superheroes, most of them his friends, who are all dead after being used in the experiments. E knocks some sense into Helen and convinces her to find her husband. When she gets home, the children find the suits and immediately figure out their mother is going on a superhero adventure and wants to go too. Dash steals the suits and Helen has to call one of her friends for a favor. She leaves the house with the siblings to watch over their youngest, Jack. She gets on the jet plane, but when inside, she realizes the kids have escaped and are on the plane too. They tell her they have left Jack with one of her friends. Bob is held in a prison of zero energy, and he hears Helen's voice coming off the intercom. It appears she is coming by jet to look for him, and Syndrome sets missiles to blow up their plane. Helen tries to dodge the missiles and asks them to stand down since she has kids on the plane. But the villain only ups the ante. The plane is blown up, but the family survives. But Mr. Incredible is oblivious to the situation. He manages to capture Mirage and threatens to kill her. Syndrome taunts him that he is incapable of doing that, and he gives up. Mirage is irritated by her boss's disregard for her life. Mother, son, and daughter manage to reach the island. Their mother permits them to use their abilities and sneaks into the island in search of her husband. Dash decides to take a walk against his sister's wishes and immediately encounters a fire eruption due to a rocket being launched. He immediately runs and saves his sister. Syndrome launches the rocket with his robot to attack the city. The next morning, the children wake up in the forest and are identified by the island's security. The guards come after them. Mirage secretly frees Mr. Incredible when no one is watching. Helen finds them in a compromising situation and knocks her out. But Mr. Incredible diverts the situation to go save their children. The children outrun the guards in the forest using their powers and manage to take a few of them down. While working together and getting away, they crash into their parents. The family works together to finish the guards. Syndrome, however, ruins the occasion by showing up and incapacitating the whole group. They're put in zero-energy prisons again. He leaves for the city to play hero, saving the civilians from his robot. Violet escapes from the prison and frees her family as well. They go to find a jet, but instead find a rocket and use its preset launch coordinates to follow Syndrome. Mirage helps them get the computer password. Frozone sees the robot attack in the city and desperately looks for his misplaced suit. The robot is causing pandemonium in the city, and Syndrome arrives on time to save the day. But he is careless with the robot controller, and it is sniped from his hand. The robot then knocks him out. The family arrives in the city, with Helen holding the seams of the entire improvised rocket. They crash land on a city street and make their way into town. But when they reach there, Bob is hesitant about getting his family to fight the robot, but Helen convinces him otherwise. The robot attacks and almost gets Dash and Violet, but Bob holds it off. Frozone appears to help, but they cannot hold down the machine. Bob goes for the remote but is obstructed. Violet finds the remote but does not know how to use it. Bob figures out how to use the robot's parts against itself and asks his family to send its disengaged hand to destroy its body. The family presses the wrong buttons several times, but they finally get them, and the robot destroys itself. Syndrome is upset when he wakes up and sees everyone cheering for the heroes. The government congratulates them, and as they are in the limo getting back home, Helen is calling home to check on Jack. She realizes that someone unknown has taken him. They reach home and are quickly incapacitated by Syndrome, who has Jack. But before he can leave with the kid, as he is flying up to his jet, Jack unleashes his powers on the villain, and he has to drop him. Bob throws Helen to catch their baby, who returns to normal in his mother's hands. and Bob throws his new car and smashes Syndrome's jet. Syndrome is killed when his cap is drawn into his jet engine, causing it to explode. After, Dash asks if they're going to move again. The family attends Dash's school sprint competition, and they urge him not to win by a large margin since he has superpowers. After he takes second place, they're out in the parking lot laughing together as a family when the Underminer attacks. The family smiles at each other before putting on their masks. And the thrilling film comes to an end. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to our channel. I'll be back with another interesting movie recap. Until then, take care.